I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. Life is unpredictable, and we know that life is shit, and my past few videos greatly shows us the why, the fleetingness, the unpredictability, the lack of continuity. We all experience some sort of shit one way or another. That unpredictability can either paralyze us or it can free us. During the first half of the year, I was spending tremendous amounts of time with my now unfortunately ex-girlfriend, and well, let's just say she was more on the pessimistic side. I wouldn't say I was forced, but I was urged to step up and try to balance that out. We often talked about looking further than the crowd and seeing what could happen and to prepare ourselves in one way or another. A sub-concept of this idea would be distributing potential pain throughout a positive experience. So when nothing is happening, at least you can feel the pain already, so when something bad does happen, then it wouldn't hurt as much. It's some form of delayed gratification, which I called distributed suffering, which is such an interesting idea that it serves a video of its own. So how does this relate to what ifs? What ifs, especially in social media, at least in the Philippine romantic context, it's became this meme-like expression. It's no longer about hypothetical scenarios anymore, in which it captures how people often get caught up in their own delusions, especially in romantic contexts, and they forget to pay attention to reality. And in most cases, we humans suck at that, trying to assess reality objectively. So take into account that we people tend to exhibit negativity bias, and I'll put a formal definition here. But in simpler Homer terms, it's basically that phenomenon or experience where the bad stuff happening feels way worse than the good stuff feels better. When we say what if nowadays, it's usually in reference to the bad. And that leads me to
all these thoughts and mental preparations prevent us from responding to what's actually happening. If we let go of this firewall of thoughts, we create space to let the environment come in, so we can respond to what happens instead of what we think would happen.
Eiselganger, I don't know how to pronounce his full name. I agree, overthinking can act as a firewall, but as with all walls, yes, it keeps things out, but it also keeps you in. And that often disconnects us from reality, which is more often than not the best thing we can do when it comes to things we have no control over. To simply experience it. Enjoy the reality that we think will eventually crumble at one point, because that's what happens. I used to be an overthinker. Well, I still am, but I changed that phrase to overanalyzer, or in a more metaphorical sense, I tip my toes too much. Which I've learned this year. All three of those interpretations, they're all the same. Basically, 4D level overthinking. I'm a chess player, and if you know anything about chess, we have these things called variations, where you try to analyze which set of moves will follow this move, and what set of lines will happen when you play this move, and so on and so forth. I apply that to real life. It's as if I'm borderline trying to predict the future. I know. It sounds taxing, because it is mentally exhausting. Here goes the first what if. What if the future is shit? Alright, but what if the future is already favorable and you just have to sit and wait? We can't look ahead for too long. Even my toes have limits. Remember a while ago when I said that I used to have this metaphorical interpretation where I like going on my toes? Well, let me discuss that because it sounds so weird out of context. Stop looking ahead, be there instead, and do what's necessary. We can only tip our toes for so long, why not just walk forward? If you're in a crowd and you can't see what's up front, of course, the logical thing or the instinctive thing to do would be try to tip your toes to get that height, correct? That, in a sense, is how I treat present and future. Of course, when you can see further ahead than the crowd, and gives you a glimpse of what's up ahead, but it's not quite clear. But you do get a glimpse. However, I've learned this from 2024 that going tiptoe and looking as far ahead as I can has prevented me from acknowledging and appreciating the now. Because I'm so focused of looking ahead right there in front of the crowd that I actually have no idea when I am. basically the foundation of stoicism. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen Ryan Holiday going around in YouTube Shorts or TikTok recently. He's all over the place. Enjoy what is, accept what isn't, and act on what you can. It's basically just that. Admittedly though, going on my toes has served me well, and it has actually helped me prepare the necessary countermeasures for things that would have gone wrong. So if you're the type to do this, to overthink and to overanalyze that you're borderline predicting the future, then I'm not entirely against what you're doing. I simply want to point out that there are dangers and risks to this. In my case, yes, I was able to counter so many potentially negative outcomes, but the energy I spent on those unnecessary countermeasures took up a lot of my time and mental effort. Just ask yourself this question: would I risk breaking my toes now in an effort to look further than the crowd? What if you can just walk forward? It's all about how we frame it. Life happens for us, not to us. This is all my fault. Actually, no, it's simply the circumstances of all your decisions and the fruit of all your hard work. But the thing is, sometimes we don't always get the best of apples, do we? So what do I mean by this? Sometimes you don't get the best fruit, but it's still the fruit of our effort. Even if you try your best, sometimes the world is just mean. I've come to realize this year that saying it's my fault is essentially the same as it's all on me, which in the right circumstances can actually have a positive connotation. Yes, shit happened, and whether or not it was your fault or it was simply the outcome of all your decisions and life was just unfavorable, it all boils down to how we frame it. Sometimes we're responsible for things not because they're our fault, but because we're the only ones who can change them. This was greatly emphasized in Mark Manson's book. A lot of stuff happens to us that at times we completely have nothing to do with. However, it's in our power, no matter how inconsiderable that power may seem, to move forward and make something of our situation, no matter how terrible it is. But Homer, what if it actually is our fault? Or at least, that's what my brain is telling me. Alright, it could be your fault. But what if it's not? And if it is, what if you can do something about it? The brilliance and stupidity of my persistence are attributed to my belief that there are times where in reality and the universe can be a tad bit kinder than usual, even for just a few seconds. I know I keep saying that life and reality are cruel in a majority of my videos and in the past few minutes, but remember when I said in my last few videos that I was a very optimistic person during the former half of the year, that I was beyond recognizable? 2023 was so great that its joy kind of spilled over to 2024. That aside, yes, June 2nd, 2024 Homer here is correct. Life can be kind as it is cruel. Picking up this mindset, or at least reminding myself of this duality of life, is one of the few reasons I've made it this far, despite the uncalled for BS I experience. The universe has a habit of being surprising, for both good and for bad things. And I'd like to quote 2023 me here, in which she says, blessing, just like tragedy, often comes to those who never even begin to think of being in the receiving end of it. Goes both ways. It's a duality, just like what-ifs. Nothing can prepare you for the real thing like the real thing. I got this from Shimon Davis, which is actually one of the channels that helped me not die these past few months, so shout out to him. I don't know if this was originally from him. Yes, Homer, no matter how much analysis depth you put into your look-aheads, life simply has too many variations. As I have said, we can only tip our toes for too long. Stop looking ahead. Be there instead and do what's necessary then. Why not just walk forward? There's beauty in doing something despite not knowing anything. I don't know how I was able to think like this. Learn to tolerate the certainty of uncertainty. Scream it with pride and delight as much as there is fear and anxiety. So what's going to happen? I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know when I am. What if this? What if that? What if something terrible happens? Alright, okay, I get it. You think a lot. That's alright. There's nothing wrong with asking such questions. It's not necessarily bad, but what good does it do? Never let the fears of the future ruin the happiness of the present. I should really listen to my past self. Hoping for the best, prepared for the worst, and unsurprised by anything in between. Quickly, shout out to my now unfortunately ex-girlfriend. I don't know what the heck she's doing. We've lost contact. For like reminding her about it has reminded me in some way, or at least made me think about it more. So it all boils down to this one phrase: if things can go that bad, then it's reasonable to believe that they can also go that well. Alright, what if we break up? Yeah, but what if we don't? But what if the worst case scenario happens? Okay, but what if the best case scenario happens? What if I lose you? Well, what if you don't? It goes both ways after all. What ifs goes both ways, guys. What ifs goes both ways. Please, I don't know. I don't know how to do an outro. I should